When I was in high school, I found a Disney princess-themed journal in my closet. The date scrawled above the single entry indicated I must have been in first grade when I received this gift from a grandparent who didn't know I hated all things pink and princess and girly. For a few pages I wrote about a fantasy world where I married Stitch and we solved Scooby-Doo style crimes together. And then, almost an afterthought, I scrawled, "I feel more like a boy than a girl." My childhood wasn't defined by the fact I was a girl who would grow up to be a man. My parents never punished my gender nonconformity. My mother sewed me a pantsuit to wear to the father-daughter dance and drove me to the hairdresser when I decided to cut my hair off in 5th grade. Instead, my childhood was defined by math. My father would concoct riddles and puzzles for me and sit with me at our dinner table explaining how to calculate the slope of a line. I competed on the math team and would sit in an empty room in my middle school taking a self-guided algebra course before ultimately walking up alone to the high school to take geometry. When I would fantasize about growing older, I would imagine myself skipping more and more grades in math, sitting in college lectures, winning math competitions, and going on to get a math PhD. And sometimes, a vision of myself as a man or an idea of life if I had been born a boy would slip into these fantasies, always an afterthought. Life got more complicated in high school. I had cut my hair short again, but this time was different. I cared about more than math. I wanted friends, I wanted to date, and I wanted those cool soccer girls and lacrosse boys to see me as something beyond a nerdy freak when I would walk by them in the hallway. As I began to care about my world around me and how I would fit into it, I learned about the word transgender and thought, for the first time, that it might apply to me. That I might be transgender. When I ran out of math and science classes to take at my high school, I transferred to a boarding school for my final 2 years. I was no longer the best at math, not even close, and surrounded by brilliant peers, I still didn't fit in. But I was a resilient kid. If I could teach myself calculus, I could teach myself how to look attractive. I bought makeup and earrings and dresses and grew my hair out and dyed it blonde. And by the time I arrived at college, I was borderline unrecognizable. I don't have many photos of this time in my life. I had achieved my goal. I was dating straight men and friends with women and going to frat parties. I was conventionally attractive, but I didn't take many photos. It didn't take long before those old feelings crept up again. One night, I decided to walk to CVS to buy purple hair dye. My entire 2 years of being an attractive woman had hinged on my blondness, and so as I walked down the streets of my college town, I had to shake off the thought that this was going to end with me chopping off my hair for the 3rd time. The word trans hadn't popped back into my head, but it had never left my YouTube feed. Ever since high school, I hadn't stopped watching FTM timeline videos. I thought everyone did. Soon, I was watching FTM haircut videos, and then, as was almost inevitable, I cut off all my hair again. I went off to an internship where I was known only as a masculine person, and unlike in high school, I had learned social skills. I knew how to ask people about their interests, how to organize parties, how to care for people when they're feeling stressed. I was so worried that having short hair again would leave me lonely like high school, but I felt like me, and I liked myself this time around. Riding the train one weekend that summer, I thought about my future, and with clarity the words, "I want to be a dad," popped into my head. And with a flash of joy it occurred to me that I could be a dad. I could transition, and I could become a man. But it wasn't as simple as that. I felt that I had to know for sure that this would be the right choice for me. So I researched and researched and researched. I bought binders and trans tape and packers and got a more masculine haircut and a gender therapist. I worked out non-stop, doing my best to masculinize my body. And I passed often, until I spoke. But I didn't feel the clarity that many trans people would talk about. I knew that some people, even those who were exceptionally thoughtful and confident, would go on to detransition. And if I'm honest with myself now, I was horrified and embarrassed by the prospect of transitioning. And so to go through with it and then detransition felt like my worst nightmare. The anxiety over whether to transition became a challenging mental health issue, one that escalated during COVID isolation. And I am very grateful for the people in my life who helped me continue to move forward. During the pandemic, I froze my eggs. I always knew this would be the first step of my transition and towards my goal of one day becoming a father. And a few days after the operation, I had my call with Planned Parenthood to start testosterone. I was still worried and unconfident, but I had been thinking about this for a year. I had talked with friends and family and my therapist. I wasn't going to know that this would work out for me until I just did it. And so, just like that, I took a leap of faith. I arrived at grad school to start my economics PhD 1 month on testosterone. My voice dropped quickly, and I remember rolling up to outdoor gatherings and being gendered as male by strangers and realizing that, wow, this was my life now. I loved the rumble in my voice as it felt deeper and deeper. I would sing in the shower nonstop. My jawline grew sharper, my shoulders broadened, and the hair on my legs became thicker. But even more than that, my brain felt right in testosterone. I stopped crying and felt in control of my emotions. I was energetic and confident. This first year of transition was an absolutely joyous time. I crammed for finals, met new friends, and watched my body change. I had never been less lonely. In high school, I thought that dating someone would make me feel loved. But living as my authentic self, a nerdy extroverted guy who cares deeply and is always up for an adventure, and being surrounded by a community of my friends, well, I'd never felt more loved. It was my first full year single since the start of college, and I woke up grateful and happy nearly every day. The fears about whether transition would work for me, whether it was the right choice, they faded away slowly. I know some people who say that as soon as they did their first shot they knew. That wasn't me. But when I realized I was months into the happiest, best time of my life, largely thanks to the comfort and confidence in myself brought on by transition, I just stopped caring about the idea of detransition. I can't guarantee that my trans identity will remain constant throughout my life, but the sheer joy of the past 2 years of my transition makes it undeniable that transitioning was one of the best choices of my life. I had envisioned having a big party at 1 year on testosterone, but by the time that date crept around, I had been passing as male for so long I was no longer fully out as trans. So I went out to trivia with a small group of friends to celebrate. I felt emotional and grateful and wondered if there would come a year when I would feel comfortable throwing a party. The second year of my PhD and of my transition flew by. I lived with 7 other econ PhD students and remained blown away by how at home I felt. I began to date. It's almost funny. I put off transition to feminize myself because I believed that was the only way people could be attracted to me. But I've had a far, far easier time dating as a trans man and have never felt more attractive. I was just wrong. And sometimes it's nice to be wrong. The changes from testosterone slowed down in my second year. I can grow a scraggly neck beard and my belly has gotten fuzzy with hair. My fat has started to redistribute and I went down 2 pant sizes. But I also began making trans and queer friends, many of whom were also done with the early stages of their transitions. While I remained largely quiet about my trans identity in my economics community, I started to come out to my new queer friend group. I felt joyful and proud to be trans. Many evenings I would walk back from the office, grinning ear to ear. The second year of my transition was even better than the first. I still can't believe that this is my life. I love being an economist, I love being a man, and I love being trans. I'm living my dream and it's better than I ever thought it could be. Now I am 2 years on testosterone. But this year I also didn't throw a party. But for a good reason. I just had top surgery. As I was lying in the hospital bed waiting for the anesthesiologist to put me under, I thought I would be afraid. But I couldn't stop smiling, thinking about the past 2 years and about how grateful I am to have grown up from a girl into a man.